Grace.
Recording in progress.
Call to order the regular meeting of the Rio Dell City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Garnes.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Excuse.
Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Woodall.
Here. Closed session, there's nothing to report out. So please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public presentation. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council or staff is not allowed under the Ralph Dunn Brown Act. Items requiring council actions not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Rich, got anything?
No.
Everybody's doing a good job.
I think, hand raised, emails?
No emails.
Okay, then we will close the public presentation and move to the consent calendar. Are there any items that council members wishes to remove from the consent calendar? I'll make a motion that we consent calendar. Okay, well, anything? Any hand raised, email? Nothing? Okay, then we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Motion carries 4-0. We'll move to the staff report, staff communications, page 17 in our package. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes and members of the council. So as we're closing up our energy project here at City Hall, we've encountered some issues. The contractor has encountered some issues in terms of the final authorization for the Humboldt battery system, which apparently cannot be installed in trios. And so we're working on a change order with the vendor to return to the original battery solution, which was a Tesla, where you can stack up to 9 of those batteries on the wall. So there'll just be 3 here. But I did want to just make sure that the council is aware of that. The project is not completely closed out at this point. We are looking to see what the schedule looks like to get the final batteries in place. In the meantime, the solar is working during the day, even with the air conditioning running on a very hot day like today. The city is pushing energy back out into the grid, very little amount when there's not such an intensive energy usage here at City Hall. It does push out quite a bit of power. And then also the generator system was installed along with fencing on the Davis Street side of City Hall. So the system should be able to operate independent of the power grid. And I believe that there was an event earlier last week where the power in town did go up, but City Hall remained on. So even with the battery system needing some changes, the system is working quite well. With that, we are reviewing different strategies for future grant submissions over the coming years. One of the things I want to, reiterate to the council, and I know that you all understand this, is as grants often come out kind of on short notice, especially these days with very tight timelines for submission. And we're going to need to start to work on some future preparatory work for grant projects, particularly related to infrastructure. So a lot of that we're still working on in the wastewater field. We've worked on that in the water field, but there are definitely some street projects we want to bring up and bring that up later in the meeting in terms of spending a little bit of city money to prepare kind of conceptual plans and documents and get public buy-in for those types of projects to make additional investments using federal and state dollars in the community. So I want the council, the staff, members of the public to think about maybe some changes in the community of things that that you'd like to see, physically changed, made safer, and other projects. And feel free to let City Hall know, let staff know what kind of projects the community would like to see. So with that, I will go ahead and return it to the council. We have reports from the city clerk, the chief of police, and others in the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Will.
Chief, I just want to, we have a good job. Sorry for pushing him like that.
I'm not sure of that actually there because time extended another month.
Thank you.
Councilmember Byrd.
I just want to thank the police department because it looks like y'all have some action. And I also code enforcement. It looks like we have closed a significant amount of cases, so I want to thank you for that too. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, I have, on the website, I see your work design for Sector Fleet. Are you able to add, are you able to put stuff on the website that exists at all? Or doesn't work at all? What you got, what you got?
Yeah, I think at this point, the system is not working to our satisfaction. We want to import over to the new website, which we have the design basically hammered out. And now it's going to be the content infill. So we're going to be working on taking what is useful out of the website and placing it into the new.
Do we still have archived all the old city agendas?
Yeah, so we have all of that material, so that'll be
That will be able to get it.
yeah, that'll be transferred over to the new site. There isn't going to be like a radical redesign of the site. It's basically going to look very similar, refreshed, and a little bit easier to operate and use.
Will we still have the weather station on it?
So there will be a weather button for people to click on. It will be off of the front main page, but there will be a clear link on.
We go with the new company.
Civic Plus.
That's a different.
Yeah, it's a different from the current vendor. They do a lot of cities all over the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'm trying to think. There are a couple of them that are done regionally, and for whatever reason, it skips my mind. Maybe Karen remembers who they said. Oh, the county of Humboldt is one of their clients.
Or Santa Rosa? Yeah, Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa. There were a couple other local ones that I just can't remember off the top of my head. But County of Humboldt is definitely one. And they do, cities of populations of varying sizes.
So it should just be better overall than our last
It
3 years. It's been kind of.
it should be better, and it also should be redundant and in a very good way.
Thank you.
The other question, so it's done. I had a question for the chief. We had a notice in our box that a business was complaining about, I guess, quote unquote, homeless lady that cuts people out and really obnoxious. Are we able to do anything with that person?
Yeah.
In short, she required a number of calls for service over the past couple of weeks. She actually was arrested last week for crime. And so she went to jail and she was released, but I'm not sure where she ended up after that.
So she's not coming back.
I can't say she won't come back. I can say she's not here right now.
But it is something that the city had, I know in the past, we had issues with some of the people doing different things on like public streets. They were parking on doing this and that, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's public street.
Correct.
And people were doing things, but then also some stuff about getting people to clean up their yards and stuff. They weren't doing it because there was a long drawn out process lately to get them to do it. And so that's my question is, are we able to deal with people like this so that it's not a nuisance to a business?
I think you're talking two issues. One is code enforcement, and the other is some issues dealing with a person who is on public streets and public sidewalks. We can't enforce sleeping on sidewalks. However, we can address blocking the sidewalk for people to have access on the sidewalk. This particular female didn't want any services provided to her. We bought her sandals to walk in because she had her shoes. We offered her a bus pass out of town because she said she wanted to go south. But in the end, we can't force her to make any of those decisions. We can only provide the assistance for her to, move along. If it becomes criminal, absolutely, we can do something about that, enforce any regulations that we have. But outside of that, it's really limited.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I have to follow. I was wondering, so if I understand we can't do anything, we can speak about sidewalk, but is there things we can do about open containers and drunken public?
Yes, actually, there was a violation. So if we find somebody who is drunk in public, those are arrestable offenses. We would judge each person individually.
Right.
When somebody's outside of the house, if they can go back inside their house, or somebody who's being rude to them, that they can't take care of themselves. That person will probably end up at Humboldt County Corrections.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions? Any hands raised or email? Okay. Then we will close this item. Thank you, everyone. Now we will move on to special call items. Public hearing on cost recovery for the abatement of 833 Pacific Avenue, page 22 in our package. City manager.
And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Community Services Officer, Ms. Mary Clark.
Good evening, Mayor Garland and council members. I'm here to open a public hearing for the abatement that occurred at 833 Pacific Avenue on March 8th, 2022. To recover the costs during that abatement. And we can receive any testimony, evidence concerning the cost recovery for the abatement.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember Carter?
No questions.
Councilmember Wilson?
No question.
Councilmember Woodall?
Yeah, I had something. Did you get a question I asked earlier today?
No.
Okay, when we came back from the last training, you said that you found out that we could also do a lien on their taxes. Okay, so is this one, but we thought we hadn't been doing that on the other three that we've done.
We have not completed that.
Okay, so is this one on the taxes?
So once this is approved, then I can go forward with the main process.
Okay, so that we will go forward with that. And can we still go forward with the other two?
Yes, I talked to, I arranged all that with Cheryl prior to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions? Any hand raised, emails? Then, I will ask for a motion to approve the finding and order, well, close the public hearing. That's not already, and I will now ask for a motion to approve the finding, the orders confirming accounts and assessments for the abatement of the 833 Pacific Avenue.
I so move.
We have a motion and there's a second. Second. We have a motion and a second. Motion carried 4-0. Finally, we will receive and file a recap of our 5-year savings plan. City manager, that's page 28 in our packet. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. On skipping over to page 29 is kind of a summary of the development of the 5-year streets improvement plan that the council has approved. What I want to note on this in particular is that there's been a lot of progress on this report. On the right column, you'll see a status update in the Excel spreadsheet with significant number of high-level projects completed or withdrawn. With the slurry ceiling, we are scheduled to have kind of this year's final project begin. They'll be starting the north end of the county, so I think Arcata and Cal Poly Humboldt on September 12th. And so I wouldn't anticipate them getting down here until probably early October. It's possible they could come down a little bit earlier than that. But that's kind of the rough time frame for when that project will begin with Dryco. And again, we're going to be covering quite a number of streets, including a portion of Wildwood Avenue. The Oval Bellevue Drainage was one of the projects that we were hoping to complete in 2022. That has been delayed, and we're pushing it to put it out for bid for the 2023 construction season. So this will probably be put out to bid at the end of the year or at the very beginning of the year. We'll see what the prices are in terms of that particular project. And then highlighted, and it doesn't quite show up as in purple, are the projects that are still outstanding on the 5-year program. So there's additional slurry sealing that needs to take place. That's primarily going to be focused on Wildwood Avenue and moving more towards the downtown for pavement preservation, long-term pavement preservation. Attached to those projects are typically some prep work, so grind outs and patching. There is Riverside North, which we're taking a look at, putting into another bid package. The Northwestern Avenue plans, that's in the Humboldt Rio Dell Business Park. Originally had a plan to elevate the roadway and widen it. However, looking at it, staff is going to be ultimately recommending on that particular project to just focus on culvert replacement and keep it relatively low key. The road still functions. The most important piece of it is really the drainage and the transfer of water. The other great news is that the US 101 Northwestern interface requirements, it does not appear at this point in time that the city has costs associated with those improvements, and that Caltrans is planning on putting that into one of their regular maintenance regimes. You'll have noticed that north of Eureka in the safety corridor and other locations, Caltrans has gone in and extended their ingress and egress travel lanes on the freeway to Mid-City Motor Worlds and Brackett Industrial Park and some other locations. So we're looking to see that Caltrans do similar work in that corridor, which is certainly an area where people drive very fast and there is concern about traffic. And then, part of the plan is also to develop some preliminary grant preparations for Pacific Avenue. I'll talk a little bit about that afterwards, but I'm gonna see if I can load up a very quick PowerPoint here to just cover the recap on some of the past few years of street work in the city of Rio Dell section. So I'm interested. Yes. I apologize for the technical issues. Not really sure what that is.
On page 31. The paper? Here. That recommend.
I'll definitely, yeah, who's lost? I understood every other year where actually it's differently. Last year. It's the. Wow. So.
It's a big
Now, in during the Olympics, pandemic crisis, would those Cal cities committees be meeting in person second months? And actually take over, but it is in person, they want to always do this first, you know, okay, which is great. I think it's usually like to get those meetings and meet people from other cities.
And doing like the files too large and it's like.
Just by accident, like, because, you know, but it makes sense to go to the same session and maybe some questions. Yeah, so it's, I generally. I know most of those things. Yeah. No, yeah, it's nice to split up. Yeah.
All right, well, what we'll try to do is work it through the system. I don't know what exactly is occurring, but I think the pictures files are too large for it. On the computer. For the computer, and so I apologize for that. But just recapping some of our prior work in the city of Rio Dell to improve street conditions, to help prevent long-term deterioration, which obviously creates higher costs. One of the packages that we have rolled out is the slurry sealing. One of the advantages of it is that it's relatively low cost. We are able to leverage partnerships with our allied agencies, the other cities, and the county, and then pool our financial resources and put out one bid to leverage contractors to come into the county to do this kind of work. Sealing is actually very, very important for asphalt roads to capture deterioration early and make improvements to the road or prevent higher costs down the road. So with Rio Dell, what we have done is spend about $130,000 on preparing for patching or for sealing by patching some of the worst alligator areas, that sort of thing. That includes crack sealing and other types of activities to try to maintain the continuity of the road, the consistency of the road structure itself. So slurry sealing and striping. So together, those costs so far to the city have been about $144,000 to the city. And then we have an upcoming project this year. We've seen some cost increases in the bid amounts. So we're at about $214,000 for this year's project. Again, these help prevent longer term costs down the road. They have actually helped save money down the road. Aesthetically, they improve the image of the street. And so by the end of this year, we will have spent just under $500,000 doing slurry seal type projects. And we still have a bit of a ways to go in terms of helping to preserve, in particular, Bellevue Avenue, main thoroughfare of Rio Dell, and preparing for that work. So moving forward. Back in 2017 was one of our, and this is prior to the 5-year road plan, but we did do some work, patch repairs and overlays in various locations that were consistently getting significant potholes every winter season. So that was a relatively small pilot project that the city did, including some repairs to the bridge abutments so that traffic over the 101 was a little bit smoother. In addition, the city did some additional patch repairs and overlays. Probably one of the nicer ones that you can see is on Ireland towards Center Street in the school. It's a short section of roadway that we knew just had to be repaved and reconditioned. And the rest of it stood a good chance of being in a good condition for slurry sealing. And in 2020, we worked with Humboldt Construction to do the Loa, Fern, Riverside, as well as drainage work on those streets, and patch repairs on Painter Street. So hopefully those images show up pretty good. 2021, we had the pleasure of working with ST Roads out of Reading, who did a lot of work on Aloha, Dixie, Oval, Rio Dell, and other streets in the community, mainly through overlays. But there was a pretty significant amount of drainage work that we conducted that'll help preserve and make sure that those roads stay in good condition for a longer period of time. And then finally this year, Riverside Cherry and Orchard with our contractor, GR Sunder, excuse me, really made a pretty impressive repair to Riverside Cherry and Orchard streets. And so by far our largest project to date. Each year, definitely scaling up the complexity of the projects and the amount of prep work and kind of engineering work that goes into them, but we've made significant progress on the action plan. So if you go to the very last page in your packet today on page 36, really recapping where we are at in terms of spending on street improvement projects. That the city has expended 1.6, little over $1.6 million in street improvements over the past few years. Through various contracts, you'll see the city of Eureka and the city of Fortuna also listed as vendors, but those are the slurry seal project costs where they get channeled through the individual cities who are sponsoring the bids for those years. So I think, that's excellent news, and a lot of progress has been made in that regard. Moving forward, so recapping the past few years where we're at with the 5-year streets plans, kind of where do we go from here? For this upcoming year, in 2023, the construction season out of the 5-year plan, based on discussions with staff and kind of the availability of staffing resources, our intent is to put out to bid for the drainage project of Oval to help continue to nurture that particular neighborhood and its repair. But staff is also going to really need to focus in on these grant projects that we have. So we have close to $3 million worth of projects, all with requirements from the state of California to accomplish. And so that includes the Eel River Trail. So biking non-motorized trail from Davis to Edward Street. We have our Gateway Beautification Project, tree installation, and then landscaping in that particular project. We also have the dog park project, which also includes a basketball facility. So those are 3 kind of big projects that have a short timeline that have to be done this year. There's no real option in 2023, excuse me. There's no real option to kind of delay those particular projects. So staff needs time to be able to focus in on that. At the same time, we'll have better information on our current financial situation. Most of those dollars of the $1.6 million are subsidized funds. They don't come from street taxes. They come from the general of the city in order to accomplish those projects. So we need to make sure that the city has adequate reserves and that the city is in a good financial position to continue the investments in the streets. And then back to what I've alluded to before, which is the need to really begin planning on future grant application projects. Obviously, there's been spending through the federal system on the infrastructure plan and the more recent funding that has come out and been rolled out through the federal government. And so we want to start having a discussion with the council about doing planning for Pacific Avenue. Basically, essentially behind City Hall and behind the fire department, that stretch there. which is very narrow and not the greatest condition, but yet sees a lot of traffic, heavy truck traffic, as well as traffic during, say, wildwood days and whatnot. And trying to develop a strategy to leverage grant funding to develop sidewalks and kind of recondition those areas. Another area of concern is Bellevue Avenue. So out on the far end of Bellevue is, I'm going to see if I can screen share again and not crash the computer. Sort of works. Okay. Another area that needs attention is really Bellevue Avenue. So this is the, for those unaware of the location of it, is on the north side of town. The situation is we have seen, practically speaking, a lot of pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic on that stretch of road. There's really no avenue for those users of the road system to access those roads safely. So it is highly problematic. And pull up the image here. The roadways are relatively narrow, probably 11-foot, just 11-foot travel lanes, and then no sidewalks. And this is actually probably one of the better sections of Bellevue. But heading down in this general direction, you can see that it's just a relatively narrow street. So one of the packages we'll be discussing with the council to bring forward is doing some prep work on some preliminary designs of what it would look like, trying to communicate with the neighbors, get some buy-in for a project that would install curb gutter, sidewalk, and that sort of thing in that area. And of course, there's all kinds of different projects. Certainly want to encourage members of the public, members of the council to come to staff and identify those because we want to start working on developing them. One of the things, particularly with some of the recent grant funding rounds, is we're kind of running out of those projects where we have pre-design. So the Eel River Trail pre-design was submitted for 3 separate grants and finally caught it on the last one. So the more work that we do up front, the easier it is for us to make application for grant funding. And so with that kind of covers the gist of just what I wanted to communicate to the council and just kind of open that dialogue. This is not, we're not looking to take any action today or tonight, but just open up that conversation and have it over the subsequent months in terms of what we're preparing and what our action plan is now that we're nearing kind of the completion of the 5-year streets project. What are the next projects? Some of the standing orders that we have from the council are not to pave roads that we know are likely to have to be dug up because the infrastructure underneath the ground is failed and needs to be replaced. So these are actions that the council can reconsider. If the council so desires. Some of those streets include the far end of Oval, 2nd Avenue, obviously, I think probably one of the biggest challenges in the city, and Elko, I believe. Elm Street. But if those, got solved, we pretty much have solved some of the worst issues in the community in terms of the road network. So we're getting much closer to it. So with that, I will go ahead and return it back to the mayor, see if there's any questions or comments of staff and any additional direction.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and yay on the streets. Yeah, thank you for doing a great job. I think staff did a great job. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes, just for my sake, where are we in the 5-year plan? What year are we Actually, are we into 5 or are we into 4? You're more,
I think we're into 3.
4 or 3. And so if I understand you correctly, we're gonna kind of take a breather from that so we can so we can accomplish the grant.
Correct. So some of these remaining projects, like in particular the slurry sealing, if there is another group effort, we would consider that at that time because there's relatively little. We don't have to prepare the bid package. We just kind of participate with the other agencies. So that's relatively easy to accomplish. But yeah, what we would propose is that for 2023, we kind of tap the brakes a little bit and try to work on the drainage issue and then round out the others in 2024.
And then the other thing, so the other, you mentioned that we were able to fund some of this. Was that funding came from general fund? Was that part of Measure J?
Absolutely.
So that's what we're looking to. It's going to be on the ballot this November that we want to extend that lowering what we're asking instead of 1% to 0.75%. But we want to extend that so we can do these kinds of things as we move forward. That
Correct.
well,
Yeah, I would say if there, Measure J, if that had not been passed in the original Measure U, these projects would not have been accomplished. So some of the benefits of Measure J and Measure U have been investments that were made into the police department to modernize the police department and make sure that we're doing our best to recruit and fill positions in the police department. So that was another major expense that came up front, and then really the general fund has zeroed in on these street improvements, and so there would be really no way to have accomplished this without Measure U and J there. Cannabis certainly has aided in additional funding, but you have to remember that Measure U came first. So Measure U came at the end of 2014. That was the funding that was needed to help preserve the police department, to help put the city into a position to pursue cannabis as a revenue generating function, as an economic development function for the city. And so at the same time, 1%, I think because we've had relative success related to cannabis revenues, that much of it does seem to be sustainable into the future, that it is prudent that and it is worthwhile to go ahead and lower the tax because we have this backfill from cannabis that has come in particularly since 2019 to help move and continue to move projects forward in the city.
but we're also seeing that the cannabis is kind of slowing down. And so the Measure J it's a big deal that we have that go forward.
Correct. So Measure J is a much more stable financial resource. I think the council is well aware. With cannabis, there's going to be waves. There's going to be good years and there's going to be bad years into the future. So there will be other good years, hopefully. In the future, there will be other bad years. And so it becomes very difficult for us to plan and do street projects that you have to plan out multiple years in advance to really pull off without a steady revenue stream to accomplish those projects. So it's really vitally important and maintained, by the way, the police department, which is a significant responsibility. The costs for providing those services, everything from dispatch, compensation, insurance, all of those go up every year. And so we have to make sure that we are funding those responsibilities as well. So it's a fund that has a lot of competition for those resources. But every single dollar that's in the general fund gets spent in the community, supporting the community.
Then I know it's getting close to the November election time. Is there a possibility that we would have another one of these public mailings go out to make the citizens aware of just how important the the major J is.
Yeah, we'll be putting out information to educate voters on what this new measure, which the new measures will be called Measure O. So Measure O information will be forthcoming. We're starting work on that, so putting together a package. And then I suspect some of the employee groups will also be stepping forward to make advocacy for Measure O's passage.
Great. I appreciate staff's diligence in making all this stuff come to be. Thank you for that.
Councilmember Little. Member Carter. Thank you for the presentation. I get a lot of positive feedback on the paving. I mean, that's what people see. They makes them feel good. Except for the people at the very end of Bellevue and Humboldt. Well, good, but that's okay. If you need people to go door to door, get public buy-in for things, projects like this, you know, I will do it. I'm great at it. But other than that, no questions. Thank you.
And I wanted to ask a question about, you said we could go back and address Oval, but I think I'll talk to you about that and get a clearer picture on.
Yeah, I think, specifically the Oval, there are a number of problems. It's probably one of the more difficult streets in that there's pretty significant drainage issues there. The biggest killer of any asphalt street project is water. So we need to improve the conveyances for the water, which the council authorizes to enter into an agreement with Whitchurch Engineering to kind of finalize and get plans ready to put out to bid. So I think we're very close to closing out that portion of planning for that particular project. And then we'll be working on putting together a bid package. So assuming that we get the drainage done, there's still other problems, including underground infrastructure. So water and potentially sewer projects that need to be done out there. So in prior discussions with the council, one of the directions staff received was to come up with a list of streets where we did not believe that there would be a need to immediately dig up the streets to fix that infrastructure. And so that is where the 5-year plan was based off of, was coming up with that list of streets where some of that infrastructure was not planned in the water CIP, which is the most information really that we have at this point in time. But there are certainly other actors out there. So Pacific Gas and Electric, AT&T, other cable utility providers. We're also in discussions with another fiber company who needs to move a line along freeway. And so, so in all honesty, I don't know that we can 100% ever guarantee that once we pave the street, it won't ever have to be dug out. Because gas leaks happen, the gas lines are underneath the street. And so, so it becomes a question of if that, if the council removed that directive, and we took another view of streets like Bellevue or Second, then maybe we could start to put together bid packages, assuming that we have the finances available to work on those streets and work on them before the infrastructure under the ground gets worked on. So I wouldn't recommend that for Oval until the drainage is taken care of. But once the drainage is taken care of, then it becomes a similar street to Elko, to Second Avenue, where and so in the end, as long as the streets are patched and repaired and compacted correctly, some of these patches really shouldn't be that intrusive on a street project. So, so it's something to consider, and we can certainly chat about it if you would like. And I don't know if Randy has anything else to add on that particular comment.
Mayor, council, so on my take on this is north and out of Bellevue Avenue. We put it off because we have the water line replacement project that's in just the main line through there. looking back on the accountability for how many times we've been out there actually fixing water leak on that stretch of road, that's been very minimal. But there has been other issues with the valve or that one service line or something like that. So getting this spots here and there, we would turn full street doing this repair, just small spots. So if you were to reconsider possibly paving that, you get pave it and then just have on the back of your mind that there will be a potential that we will be digging in it. And then eventually the main line would have to be replaced, but other cities do it all the time, where you just have a pathway where the main line's placed in, make sure the patch is done, and like I said, the patch, if it's done correctly, you should hold it pretty well. It's that way you get that part paved, and the amount of time that we're waiting for it to happen, you're ready for it. So you might as well start applying it while you can. There's a disadvantage for not getting the infrastructure done first, but on the other part, how many years are you gonna wait before you can do it? So we look at it.
Good answers, I appreciate that. Okay, so are there any hand raised or emails? Any questions? Okay, then I think we can close that item. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to council reports. Councilman Hurd.
Okay, I got some reports. So let's see, I went to a Cal Cities Redwood Region meeting down in Point Arena. We heard from California Offices of Emergency Services about funding opportunities to mitigate potential disasters. Is that how you would sum that up? Yeah, okay. Did that. It was super interesting and always nice to connect with other Redwood Region folk. We had a beautification, walkability, and pride meeting 2 weeks ago, last week. Always a good meeting too, very positive and uplifting. We did discuss maybe doing water tank mural, which could be cool. And lastly, I had a REDEC meeting where we heard from an organization that does farmers markets. Food Unites Us at Cal Poly Humboldt, and partially the Growers Association, I believe, not the Alliance. One of them is food and one of them is cannabis. This is the food one. But it got me all fired up on farmers market. So yeah, I think there's no reason Rio Dell couldn't have a really awesome farmers market at some point. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Little. Amanda, I was wondering if you wanted to do your chamber.
I did go to the show. Oh God, I had 4 meetings. Can you report? You were there, right? I didn't make notes for that one.
Oh, I just thought
I was there. Well, we talked a lot about Christmas decorations, yeah,
Christmas decorating
and recapping Wildwood Days
and the kiosks.
yes,
We're gonna put in.
and the Snell, the Marlene Snell Memorial Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I just,
no, you're right. I completely blanked that meeting. Thank you, Julie.
I have a HTA meeting tomorrow, and I have the fire department meeting this Thursday, but I was talking to the fire department just today, and they had a busy weekend. They must have had over 10 calls. I mean, in the area, out of McCann, out on 36, they've had a lot of calls, and they're shorthanded. So you know anybody that wants to join the volunteer fire department? Put it there. That's about it. Thank you. Wilson?
I don't really have any meetings that we've had. Well, we have a HWMA, I believe, they're actually. So I only have a thing to report. I have a question I didn't ask during staff reports. A while back, a couple, 3 months ago, we had a council meeting that was pretty heavily to a cannabis fair in the county, in the city. Is that still happening? Does that disappear? Or?
That was the proponent has not submitted a proposal, and I believe the date to have submitted one has already passed for their original date, unless the chief knows of a recent submission. Yeah, so I don't know if Murder Advisors is still interested in pursuing that event. But I think their original scheduled date was sometime in September.
September 24th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something to that effect.
yeah, so they would be required to, submit an application at least 30 days in advance for the approval of the chief of police. So we have not received one.
Thank you. That's it.
And, Councilmember Carter reported on the 2 meetings that I was at, so I don't have to report on them. So, I think that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second? Second. Will be adjourned until September 20th.